I give the floor to the Russian Federation.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good evening, Mr. Adjus, Mr. Bamertz. It's evident with what an upbeat mood you spoke with, and with your enthusiasm in reporting to us about your achievements. What haste in sharing with us news about another conviction of a high-ranking Serb. The publicized verdict against Ratko Mladic is the continuation of a politicized approach adopted by the International Criminal Tribunal for former Yugoslavia. It has become a vivid stain on the reputation of the residual mechanism now. Pretty soon it will be 30 years, almost a third of a century, that we're seeing a biased and costly Hague machinery of justice methodically grind the lives of the participants of the Balkan War. It's a war that has become a tragedy for hundreds of thousands of Serbs, Croats, Bosnians, and representatives of other ethnic groups. It's a war that destroyed a once unified state, Yugoslavia. It's a war that particularly clearly highlighted how vulnerable international law is. How easy it was for NATO states with complete impunity to trample the UN Charter and begin a military operation in a third country. Was anyone held responsible for the massive airstrikes against civilian targets, including within the Belgrade city limits and other major cities? For the murder and wounding of thousands of civilians, including journalists in the Belgrade television center and in the Chinese embassy? Why has the ICTY, while having jurisdiction, all of a sudden has become blind and deaf to certain crimes? Why did it prefer to turn a blind eye to the evident crimes of Kosovo Albanians in the future, and now their cases are being handled by the Special Court on Kosovo? The ICTY has gone down in history as an instrument of revenge rather than as an instrument of justice. The residual mechanism inherited the negative attributes of its predecessor. Recently, the President Adjus endorsed a decision on the transfer of the former leader of Bosnian Serbs, Radovan Karadzic, to serve his sentence in Great Britain. This was done in spite of the requests of the lawyers of Karadzic and Karadzic himself, who justifiably pointed out that in that country, the life and security of the convicted Serb will be under threat. As is well known, there was already a case in a British jail of a knife attack and wounding against one of the former Serbian military commanders, Radislav Grstić. The leadership of the residual mechanism and the government of the United Kingdom now bear the full responsibility for the life and health of Karadzic. We will carefully monitor the assurance of his rights. Mr. President, the ICTU and the residual mechanism, unfortunately, have not become institutions of reconciliation in the diverse Balkan community. The reason for this is a shortage of fairness in the verdicts issued, bashing one side of the conflict while hushing up the wrongdoings of the others. Now we're witnessing once again the promotion of the thesis of the so-called lack of cooperation of Belgrade with the residual mechanism on the contempt for court case. I just want to remind everyone that the case itself indirectly is linked to questionable accusations against the Serbian politician Vojislav Šešelj, who over 11 years, just imagine that, 11 years spent 11 years in the UN jails of the ICTU while awaiting an acquittal. Wherever you have a lack of justice and coherence, you also have a lack of trust. So what is the solution to this situation? On issues, on cases of contempt for court, there is a clear, well-known position that France has adopted on the Hartman case. Mr. President, Russia attaches great importance to the issue of the enjoyment of rights by individuals under detention, including the right to medical assistance. The Security Council, in its resolution 2529, last year specifically adopted a position on this point. Nevertheless, the residual mechanism does not consider it a good idea to report to the Council about how these rights are being ensured. We didn't find any information on the current state of health of Ratko Mladic, including the degree of his convalescence after his operation. A full independent examination and certification, including whether he has retained his cognitive function, has still not been conducted. We strongly insist on this kind of examination being conducted. Last year, to the docket of cases of the residual mechanism was added the case against Felicien Kabugi. We will carefully monitor the state of health of the defendant, and we expect the appointment of an independent medical expert for the assessment of the advisability of transferring the defendant to the facilities of the mechanism in Arusha and his capacity to stand trial. At the same time, we hope that the mechanism will complete its work within the forecasted duration of the court proceedings and will refrain from artificially dragging out the proceedings. Thank you very much, Mr. President.
Thank you very much.